Hello, and welcome to the Distractables. My name is Marie, and I'm here with my friend Jesse J. Anderson.
Hey, how's it going? I'm super excited to do this today.
Same. This is our very first recording. The overall premise of this podcast is like super casual conversation, and this week it's just the two of us, but our plan is to have a guest on every week, keep it super short, about 30 minutes, and just talk about all things ADHD, but focusing on those practical tips.
Sounds good. Do you want to intro first or?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So, yeah, my name's Marie. I'm based in Melbourne, Australia, and I am the founder of a productivity app called Llama Life. It's an app that helps ADHD folks do tasks and routines and get through their daily life, just make things a little bit easier. And it's something that I made for myself, and it wasn't really meant to be a thing, but I put it on Twitter one day and people really gravitated towards it. So now it's a product that is available out there. We're in the App Store, both Android and iOS, and also on the web.
Awesome. Yep. My name is Jesse J. Anderson. I'm the author of the book Extra Focus, the quick start guide to adult ADHD. And I also write a weekly newsletter that also is called Extra Focus. And then I just write lots of random stuff about ADHD online. And similar to you, I have a full-time job as a developer. So I didn't create my own product, but I'm doing development design sort of work as my job as well. So we share that in common,
Hmm.
which helps us to talk about fun, nerdy topics related to that work.
Yeah, and that's actually how we met, right? Because you were just writing about ADHD online on Twitter, and I saw one of your posts. You were doing this program called Ship 30 for 30, where you have to
Mhm.
publish these very short articles and put them on Twitter. But the whole goal was to get that momentum to put your work out there. And I saw one of your short little essays, and I was like, oh my gosh, it just resonated so much with me. And I think we just connected over that. And I don't know, we've probably been friends about 2 years now. It's been
Yeah,
quite
it's
some
been
time.
yeah, I feel like 2, maybe 3 years. I don't know. I'm not good with time. Yeah, it's been kind of a couple years just connected over Twitter back when I loved Twitter, which is it's
Should
not even
call it
called
X.
Twitter anymore. Not the same as it was back then, but yeah, so we connected over there and we've been good friends since.
Yeah. I thought today we could talk a little bit about how we got to this point and all the different jobs that we have. So we just talked about the jobs that we're doing now, but how do we actually get there, and how ADHD kind of factors into that? Because I imagine there's a lot of folks out there with ADHD who are struggling in their work at the moment, or maybe they've hopped around different jobs. And I want to normalize that a little bit because I definitely went through that journey as well, like trying to figure out what works for me. And I think a lot of it is just about recognizing that your brain works differently. So maybe a job that suits a neurotypical might not be something that suits someone with ADHD, and just talking about that journey.
Yeah, I this isn't universal or anything, but I know that myself included, a lot of people with ADHD have had a lot of jobs. And I feel
Yeah.
like there's a lot of different reasons for that. But one of them is like what you mentioned, like we get to a job and we just get bored or we quickly figure out
Mhm.
like this is not compatible with how I work. In a future episode, we're gonna have Trina Haynes as a guest, and Trina and I did a workshop together. And one of the first slides we showed was just a screen that listed like 50 jobs on it. And we were having people guess, what are all these jobs? What do they have in common? And the answer was they were jobs that either Trina or I had because we had both had like 30 different jobs throughout the last 20 years or so. And yeah, just so many jobs where I would start and maybe I'd be really excited for the first like month or so. I'm like, oh yeah, this is great. I think everything's really optimistic. Everything's going to be great. And then I have a conflict with my boss. I'm like, oh, this isn't going to work. Or I'm like,
Mhm.
timesheets, this is not,
Oh,
this
oh
does
my
not work with
God.
my brain. And I feel like a lot of those jobs were just me, especially without knowing about ADHD. I was just like trying stuff out and then realizing, oh, okay, add to the list, like required timesheets isn't going to work for me. So any
Yeah, yeah.
job that has that, I just can't do it. And so I need to, and building that list over time of what are those things I'm just not compatible with because I'm
Yeah,
not going to
yeah.
even try to make it work with a job like that. And luckily I have found over the years a few jobs that did work really well for the way that my brain works.
Yeah, for sure. And like, even so, I didn't have many jobs. You were saying like 30 jobs or something like that, but I had really weird jobs. And I also really struggled to figure out what I wanted to do. Like I was so late. My brother, he's about a year younger than me, we're very close, but he finished university and went into his job, and that all seemed really easy for him. Like he knew straight away what he wanted to do. And I took years. Like I was very late. I think I got my first job at 25, which is quite late. Before that, I say first job. First, my parents called it like a real job because it was in corporate and it was like getting paid a proper salary. Whereas before that, I did like weird jobs. But I took forever. Like I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And I just thought it was super hard. Like everything interested me, but then nothing interested me. And at one point, I wanted to be an FBI agent. That was probably my weirdest one because this probably shows my age, but I was a super fan of the X-Files back in the day. And I was like,
Oh,
I want to
same.
I want to be like Mulder and Scully. I want to be investigating stuff. And I even studied criminology at university as a subject because I was like, oh yeah, I want to be like criminal profiler and stuff. I just had
Yeah.
like wild ideas, things that were just really crazy and out there. But then it turns out criminology is super boring because it's all about legal rules and like figuring out there's just too much legal stuff, too much memorizing rules. And I was like, oh, I actually failed the exam for criminology because it's just too boring. It was that. And I also left the exam early because I just got bored in the exam. It was so dumb. It was like the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life, I think. Like I just
Hmm.
walked out. I think I went to go see a movie halfway because I was just,
What was the movie? You went.
I
The
don't
X
even
Files movie came
remember.
out, right? You went to go see the X Files movie.
I don't think it was the X-Files movie even. I was adding up my scores. I was like, I think I got this right. I think I got this right. And then I was like, I think I got enough to pass. And I just walked out.
Oh, so
And
you
then,
walked out thinking that you had done it. You're like,
yeah,
I pretty
yeah,
much nailed it. I'm gonna walk out.
yeah, so dumb. It was like,
Oh man.
yeah. And I almost did it. I got 47%. And
Oh.
obviously you need 50 to pass or
Hmm.
51 or whatever. But I went back to the university and I said, can I get I can't remember what it's called. You can apply, like if you just fail, you can apply. Oh, it's called a supplementary exam in Australia.
Hmm.
You can
Okay.
apply to do a special exam to take it again. And it's basically like a second chance. But they told me you don't qualify for that because you didn't show up for all these other things related to the course and hand in those assignments. And I'm like, no.
Oh,
It
so that
costs
means you would have had to go through the whole thing
Yep.
again to.
Yep. It cost me a lot of
Ah.
money because I basically wasted the money toward that subject and I had to take another subject to make up for it, which took
Yeah.
another semester. That was like a massive learning for me. I don't know, it wasn't suitable. So that was one of my
Hmm.
big things. I was like, I want to be FBI agent, do criminology. And I even went as far as to look at in Australia, what is the equivalent of the FBI? And it's this agency called ASIO, ASIO. And I looked into the application process. I was like, going to go for it, but I didn't.
But not so much.
Because one day I
It
woke
re-
up and I'm like, nah.
Yeah, it reminds me like when I was growing up, I was like, I think a lot of kids my age, I was really obsessed with space. Like space sounded
Mm,
awesome. I really, for a long time, really wanted to be an astronaut. And really, like for me, the reason I abandoned that idea was because my dad is really tall. My dad is 6'6". And
hmm.
so at the time, I think it's changed now, but back then in the 80s, you couldn't be, I don't remember exactly. I think it was like you couldn't be an astronaut. You couldn't go to space if you were taller than 5'10" or something like
Okay.
that. And
Hmm.
so I wasn't that tall yet, but I was like, my dad's 6'6". There's no way I'm gonna be like 5'10". And so
Yeah.
I basically was like, that I'm not gonna be able to go to space, and that's why I abandoned it, which is a really weird reason. But knowing what I know now, oh, I would have been a terrible astronaut. They do the most boring, monotonous, like they get to go to space, yeah, but then they're just sitting there doing like the most boring, monotonous sort of work that I
Hmm.
feel like probably, and just like the schooling required for it. I don't think luckily for me, that dream I think was killed before I ended up walking out of the exam to watch a movie or whatever, because that's probably where I would have ended up as well. And it would have been a costly mistake, as it sounds like it was for you.
Is the height requirement because you're in a small space and you got to
I
turn
think
and maneuver yourself you
Yeah, I
know.
think that was part of it. The fact that you're in a small space. And I think it was just the way the suits were designed at the time.
Oh,
Again, I believe this requirement has gone away. Also, I think space affects you like a decent amount more if you're
mm.
at that like the height. Because I know like gravity is a big. I
Oh,
don't remember the particulars of it, and I'm pretty sure that rule has changed. But I remember
yeah.
I was like reading one of my space books, and then I just saw that fact, and I was
Mhm.
just like heartbroken. I was like, oh, that's not gonna work. My dad's too tall, and so I didn't end up near as tall as my dad, but I'm like 6'1", 6'2", which was yeah
Oh,
too tall
wow.
to be an astronaut in the 80s.
I would totally I would fit the requirement. I'm like 5'1". You're like a whole head
Right.
taller than me. It's
Yeah,
so
you'd be
funny
the
because
ideal candidate. You could fit in all the
yeah,
spots I
yeah.
need.
Yeah, exactly. I could maneuver my way through. Yeah, cool. What other crazy jobs? Oh, also had this job. I don't even know what it's called in the States. It probably has a ton of different names, but it was like a part-time sort of summer job. And it was for putting those glass bottles that are like twisted, and then you can put like layers of sand in them, like colorful sand, and then you
Is
stick like
that yeah, do you put like the face on it and like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the what's it, the troll hair on
The
top?
troll hair, yeah. So you put sand in, you fill it to the top, and you can choose your own colored sand, and then you put troll hair to like stopper it at the top, and you stick
Hmm.
eyes on. And then we also had these pipe cleaners. Do you call them pipe cleaners as well?
Yeah,
Like
I
that?
think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So the little fuzzy things with wire in them, and then you stick those on as arms. And then we had a ton of accessories, so you could make it like playing tennis or holding a mic, guitar, playing
I
golf,
remember
whatever.
I
Mm.
remember, so we have the local fair that I grew up going to every year. They had these, I don't know what they call them here, but yeah, like these colored like sand bottles with, and I remember looking at them and being like, who in the world is buying these things? Like, who
Lots of
wants this weird tchotchke of this like bottle with colored sand in it? But there was always people at that stand, always
yeah,
like filling up, putting in the different colors in there. So
yeah.
yeah, apparently some people love it.
Yeah, a lot of kids come through and they do it and they pick all their accessories. And then what I had to do was I had a hot glue gun, which was super fun. And
Mm.
then I had to ask them what accessories they wanted. And then I'd be like, glue everything on. And I just remember going, oh, I'm so quick at this. I'm really good at this. That was just like a summer job, but it was fun. I think what made it fun and work for me was it was fast paced. We were always
Yeah.
really busy, and there's a lot of things going on because you had to make sure all the sand trays were filled, all the accessories. It felt like there was some variety and it was interesting, which is pretty key for me. And I think a lot of
Hmm.
folks with ADHD would agree, like it has to be interesting. If it's not interesting to you in some way, it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, I feel like over the years, like I said, I've had probably 30 something, some odd jobs.
Hmm.
And there's been a key few that I think really hit the right spot for me that really worked with the way that I work.
Hmm.
And I think the first job I found that was like a natural fit for the way my brain worked was actually delivering pizza. And so I got a job as like I was supposed to be a delivery driver and also work in the kitchen, but I did not want to work in the kitchen at all. I was like, that sounds awful to me. I don't want to like I had worked at McDonald's before that and I was like, I don't want to do anything with like actually touching the food. And so I'm just going to avoid it as much as possible. So I'm just going to like hide out and wait until there's a delivery, wait kind of hide in the back while someone else makes the pizza and then I'll grab it and deliver it. I actually had 3 different jobs delivering pizza or something, maybe more than that. I like
Like
switched
different companies.
companies.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah.
I've delivered for several different places. And
Hmm.
for probably 4 or 5 years I spent where I delivered pizza, and I've never, not a single time did I make a pizza. Even though multiple of those places that I worked at, it was supposed to be in my job requirements, and
Yeah.
I successfully just avoided it the entire time that I worked there because I was like, I'm just gonna play dumb and not ever learn how to do it and avoid doing
Hmm.
the pizza, which made it, I don't know, maybe some of my coworkers hated me. I never heard that, but maybe that was possible. But for me, I loved the job because all I did was drove around in my car, listened to music or whatever. Like
Yeah.
they didn't really have podcasts back then, but I was
I
just
was gonna say
listening
podcasting,
to,
yeah, would have been
I had my Discman that I had hooked up
Discman.
and it
How
was
old are we?
so
Discman.
I had my Discman and it was hooked up to, it's the weirdest thing to describe to someone that wasn't from this era because I had my
Yeah, yeah.
Discman and then I used the headphone port that connected to this weird, like fake plastic cassette tape. And then I pushed the cassette tape into my stereo deck.
To
And
connect it.
that's
Yeah, yeah.
how I could play the CD because my car radio didn't, or my car stereo didn't
I
have a
had
CD
that too.
player.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know
This
how that thing worked.
that thing's
It's got
crazy.
to be magnets or something. I don't know. But anyway, that job was like amazing because it was just like all I was doing was just listening to music and then just trying to drive to places as fast as possible, which was like
Mhm.
really fun. My ADHD brain loved figuring out how to navigate the city as fast as possible. And anytime I came to a red light, I would take a right, I would turn because I'm like, I'm not going to stay at a light. I'm going to turn and I'm going to figure out another way to get there. And
Oh,
so that was like
yeah, 'cause
always
you
my
can t
goal is like never stop the car, always keep moving.
wait, but that's not in
Um,
every city. You can't just turn on a red light in
that's
Australia.
true. It's
But
you can't do that like
yeah.
if you work like in the middle of Seattle or something like that. But
Yeah, yeah,
I lived
yeah.
in a suburb that's like an hour south of Seattle, and I was like, that was always my goal, just never stop,
Keep
keep going.
moving. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and so that was a
Interesting.
really great job for me because in a way I was making my own schedule because it was like I showed up like it didn't my the time of things didn't really matter because I'm like on the road the whole time. So it's like
Mhm.
I didn't have to do things to someone else's schedule. I just showed up around the dinner rush and
Mhm.
hopped in a car and drove around, delivered pizza, and it was great. The only thing is it's terrible on your car. And at some point, I don't want to be raising a family and I'm still delivering pizza. That's not exactly the conversation starter you want to have at the dinner party.
Yeah, yeah.
But I love that job for several years. It was a great starter job for me.
Mhm, mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And it's so funny. We both have our own businesses as well. You've got a few things going. You have an element of like your own business, which I think, I don't know, ADHD and entrepreneurship just works so well for me. And it might not work for everyone because everybody's situation is a bit different. So if you have a family to support, like a large family, maybe you can't just quit your job and start your own thing. But
Right.
you
Yeah.
but you could do something on the side. You could do a project which might become something else later on. There's many different ways to do it. But for me, I think it's so critical to have some part of your job. It's never going to be perfect, but some part of your job that you really are passionate about and interested in. Like even my job now, so building Llama Life, I do a lot of dev. Like I'm a developer, but I'm also a designer, which you are as well, developer and designer.
Hmm.
I think it's a really cool combination to have because you can really bring a product to life if you can design it and imagine what it's going to be and develop it. But I don't work by myself. I work with two other people as well. And we have this small team of three, and we're just a great combination because everybody brings something to it. But I still have to do stuff I don't like. There's definitely
Right.
still the business side, accounting, taxes, just like regulation stuff like we have to do as well. But I have half of it that I love and the other half that's not as great.
Yeah, and there's the meme of I quit my 9 to 5 so that I could have my 24/7. When you
That's
work for
true.
yourself, it's you're always working in a different sort of
Yeah,
way or
yeah, yeah.
whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do have a full-time job right now. I'm doing kind of both at the same time.
Mhm.
But I accidentally landed in a field that really works for me. And so a lot of jobs being a developer, you're able, not all of them, but there's more jobs in that kind of field where you can make your own schedule. There's a lot more flexibility. Once you get to a certain level, there's a lot more trust of where people just trust that you can do your job and they don't have to micromanage the minutes you're on the clock or anything like
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
great. Having gotten to that point, it fits me really well because my work rhythms aren't normal. And
Yep.
I think a lot of people with ADHD relate to that. If you were to track like my output for every day, it's like
Mhm.
going to be wildly different.
Yeah,
Some days
yeah.
I'm going to do a ton of work and get so much done. And then I might go 3 days where I'm like, I almost did nothing. Like, that's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
totally true, but that's what it feels like. Nothing actually got done
Yep.
3 out of the 4 days. But that fourth day, I did 4 days worth of work because it was like, that's how my rhythm is. And you can
Mhm.
actually, I was just recently looking at in a this is technical for people that aren't in like the development world, but using GitHub, I can see which days I'm doing kind of the most commits, the most like
Mhm.
work.
Like
And it's
saves.
very
Yep.
much, I can see this like common pattern of it goes up for a day and then it's down for a few days and then it's up really big and then it's down. Like
Yeah.
very obviously seeing my pattern of it's not one high line that just continues to go. It's like up and down because
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
how I'm working. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm building up to this thing
You're
and then getting a bunch of work done in like a big rush or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah. You're working with your brain. Like that's how your brain works. So you're letting it work the way it needs to work, which can be a little up and down. And I'm the same. I have these bursts of energy where I do a lot of stuff. And then the rest of the time, it's not working as well. And I think one thing that I'm trying to do more is just, yeah, go with that flow a little bit more and not force myself. Like when I'm on, yeah, go for it. Because I don't know how long that's going to last. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to go for it.
Right.
Which might mean that sometimes I work quite late, but then other times when it's not working for me, like it's not happening, then maybe I'll take a break. And that's easier said than done. But I think just the big thing for me is like being very self-aware on like how I'm feeling and how my energy levels are, and trying to work with that versus work against it. And I think that's one of the things I struggled with in corporate when I had my corporate job, was that I was trying to fit into the corporate system, which doesn't let you do that. You can't just, oh,
Hmm.
hey, boss, I'm not feeling it today. I'm gonna stop. You can't be like, I'm gonna stop at 4 today because I'm just not feeling it. But don't worry, I'll work super late the next day or whenever my motivation hits. That's not going to cut it. So I had a lot of trouble fitting into that kind of corporate system where you had to show up 9 till 5 and be on that whole time. And I also had this issue where I'm just a little restless. Like I'm not super hyperactive, but I'm a bit restless inside. So I would just get up all the time. And I got told, we're an open plan office, and I got told, stop getting out of your seat. You're distracting other people. And I didn't even realize I was doing it. But the thing
Right.
is, my boss sat opposite me in an open plan office. So every time I got up, she could see. And in my performance appraisal, it was like, you're doing really well. Like, you're great. Everything's good. But you get up way too often. Like, stop getting up.
This is
And I'm
like what
like,
I saw when I was like in elementary school on my report cards and stuff like that.
yeah,
Like
the whole
he keeps
but.
getting out of his seat. Yeah. Or yeah.
Yeah,
Or the great at
great.
this, but
But yeah.
all the assignments are late. Or yeah, getting out of the
Yeah.
seat was definitely one I saw too. Yeah.
But what happened, because I was getting up out of my seat so much, like I'd go make a coffee, go to the bathroom, I'd be walking down the hallway. Lots of good things happen when you're walking around. And
Right.
so what ended up happening was I knew everyone. Like I knew a lot of people. I also knew the CEO, because the CEO is like walking around sometimes too. And so we'd have little hallway chats, and it worked out really well for me because in that same company, I ended up moving to a different role. And the role was more like an innovation type role, which required me to collaborate with different parts of the organization. And guess who can
Hmm.
collaborate? Because I know all the people and I know all the different
Right.
departments, because I saw this person walk down the hall. I don't even work with them and they're in a different department. But I know them because we always seem to be getting up and going to the kitchen, making a coffee. And so that ended up working pretty well. I guess up until it didn't, which is I got bored of it. I got bored of it after a while. But it
But
was
that would
a
happen. That would happen way faster if you had to stay in your seat. I feel like that's the other thing, is like just getting up and walking around doing that sort of stuff. That helps. Like when you sit down again, it's almost like you've renewed some energy to keep going.
Mhm, mhm.
Where it's again like going back when I was like, I don't know, in high school or something like that, trying to do homework. If I'm gonna sit down and just stare at my homework for 2 hours, like 2 minutes into that process, I'm no longer doing any work. And so just staring at the work for 2 hours is
Oh,
not going to get anything done. I need to be getting up and doing something, or doing like a Pomodoro timer or
mhm,
something
mhm.
to add any amount of novelty or stimulation or something to revitalize, add some interest into the task I'm doing. Otherwise, because
Yeah,
once
yeah,
you hit
yeah.
that point where it's boring, is then something has to change, because
Yeah, yeah.
I'm never going to be able to get any more work done if I
Yeah, yeah.
can't
Yeah.
revitalize that in some sort of way.
And that's the cool thing about when you work for yourself. It's you can create that environment for yourself. Like we all work
Hmm.
remotely. And so if I need to get up and make a coffee or just get up because I want to get up, I don't have to ask. I'm not disturbing anybody because we're remote and no one
Hmm.
even knows I'm getting up. As long as I'm still getting my work done and not holding up the team and doing what I said I was going to do, it's fine. Just get up, do whatever, come back. I work really late sometimes because it's happening for me, but it still gets done. Yeah, not everyone can do that. But I think one thing to think about is maybe how can you create something like that? It might not be for your whole job, but just create something like that where you have this outlet where you can do something that's going with how your brain works and how you might want to work. as a side, like a little side project almost to begin with, or find a job or a company that will have some elements of that. Maybe the remote work where you could get up if you needed to. There's always ways, like it's never going to be perfect, but there's ways that you can find like, oh, this company is a little bit more suited to me, or this job is a little bit more suited to me.
Yeah, and I think a really big part of it that took me a long time to get to is just the idea of accepting that my brain is going to work different. And so
Yeah.
I like to think of it as like shame free productivity because for so long I was trying to find all these productivity hacks because I was struggling at work with different things.
Hmm.
And I was feeling bad about that. I was feeling, oh, I should be doing it like this, or I'm supposed to do it like this. And that's so hard for me. And a lot of what I think I've come to just accept when that stuff happens, rather than feeling bad, feeling shame that, oh, I'm different or this doesn't work for me or whatever it is, instead trying to be curious, not judgmental. Because for so long, because all the voices I was hearing from teachers and authority figures was judgmental. And so that's what I was learning to look at my quote unquote problems with my differences was
Hmm.
judgmental. What's wrong with this? Why can't I fix this?
Yeah, yeah.
And lately I've been able to have much more of that, like being curious. Oh, why? Like, why is this thing a struggle? Like, maybe that's just not compatible with me. And for me, again, the timesheets, that was the thing. I've had those jobs where I have to track timesheets and I'm just not compatible with that. I treat it as there's other jobs out there, like a firefighter. Like, I'm never going to be a firefighter. That's not a job for me. And another thing on that list is I'm never going to be X job that has time sheets. That's just now off the list of
Mm.
that I'm ever going to try to get or apply for or anything. And I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
obviously that's like somewhat of a privileged perspective because now I have a job where I don't have that. I started to reframe that it's not about feeling bad. It's about finding what is compatible with my brain because my brain's not going to just like change and suddenly be good at handling timesheets. There's not like a fix for that. So you're like
Yeah, yeah.
finding, like, I'm treating those difficulties as part of the like the rubric or whatever for choosing jobs that I would
Hmm.
apply for and stuff like that
Yeah.
or
So would you say
pursue.
make a list of things, but then you won't get everything on your list, but you could make a list and then say, okay,
Totally. Yeah,
here are
because you
some
have
like non-negotiable at all. Like this one is like on top. This is my main thing. And then a few extras.
yeah, absolutely. Because like you were saying, going the entrepreneur route means cool, you can have a lot more customization for
Yeah.
some of these things, but it
Yeah.
doesn't mean like you don't have to do any of the bad work, like the
Yeah.
stuff that
Yeah.
sucks. Like that still is there. It's about figuring out, yeah, weighting those
Trade-offs.
things and the trade-offs.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
because I have a job right now, which I'm very thankful of, that's very flexible, but I still have an early morning meeting that I have to be at.
Hmm.
And if I was working for myself, maybe I wouldn't have that meeting at that time because that's difficult for me to be on time. But that's like a trade off. I have these other advantages to the job. So I'm going to have to figure out how to make it to this meeting on time or
Yeah.
whatever those things are. So it's about figuring out and just not feeling bad about it. Cause that was for so long, my
Mm.
default was like,
Yeah. Yeah. I
when I
like that.
struggled with a thing, I was like, oh, I'm broken. Everyone else can do these timesheets or I can expense reports or whatever those things are that other people were really good at and I always struggled at. I just felt bad for it, like I was broken. And
Yeah.
instead, it was more for me, I've just reframed it as that's just something that's not compatible for me. I guess maybe a better example would be like, I'm not going to like try to join the NFL. That's not where my skill set is. Some people are born with skills where that will make sense. And
Hmm.
that doesn't
Hmm.
make sense for me, just the same as kind of these other things I'm figuring out over
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
of like a job that has this thing and this thing. Those are non-negotiables for me. Like again, the
Hmm.
timesheets, like that's a non-negotiable. Like I can't do a job that has that. And
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
other things like an early morning meeting that like that might be a trade-off that I'm willing to accept. But it's yeah, that's been my approach for figuring
Yeah.
some of
Yeah.
that stuff out.
Yeah, I like that. And I think I also read somewhere that it's quite common, like it's a lot more common nowadays for people to have several different jobs throughout their lifetime. Whereas like way back, you might just have one job. And like
Right.
it's really important what career you pick, your career path, because that's like your one job and you might end up doing that your whole life. But I feel like now, like people change careers so many different times. And even throughout that, like I only found my like interests, I think, in my 30s, like just thinking, okay, this is what I really love to do. And what you said, what is non-negotiable and what isn't. But these are things I really love to do. I love creating stuff and just
Right.
making something out of nothing. It's so interesting to me. There's so many things that could go wrong, and it's just like exciting, and like that's the stuff I love. I think it's that clarity that you were saying. I know now what I really am not good at and what I really don't like, and what I am good at and what I really love doing. So just trying to find something that fits with that. Not 100%, but as much as I can that fits with that.
Yeah, 100%.
Maybe that's a good place to end the episode. We want to try and keep these quite short, around 30 minutes. But yeah, where can we find all your work and find your stuff?
Sure. Yeah. So my book is Extra Focus, and my newsletter also called Extra Focus. So if you go to extrafocus.com, you can sign up for the newsletter there. And then the book is just available everywhere. So Amazon or your local bookstore. If they don't have it, you can request it and they will be able to get it, which is pretty cool. Yeah. And then I'm online everywhere that you can be on social media. Just ADHD Jesse. I'm on all the platforms. I probably use Threads the most right now. That's when I'm probably most active on. But I post my stuff in all the different places. So you can follow me wherever you prefer to hang out these days. And how about you? Where can people follow the stuff you're doing and get their own copy of Llama Life if they don't have it already?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at 3 Hour Coffee. That's spelled out the word 3 Hour Coffee. And you can find Llama Life in the App Store or the Google Play Store. Just search for Llama Life. Or you can go to our website. It's llamalife.co. That's not .com, it's a .co, which I wish I never got, but llamalife.co. And we're on Twitter as well, at Llama Life, and Instagram at llamalife.co. Cool.
Awesome.
We will see you on the next episode, and we've got some exciting guests lined up. Next episode will be Trina Haynes, who's a dear friend of both of ours. So that should be like super fun.
I was just going to say, we're going to have a good time for sure. Trina's awesome.
Yeah, she's so cool. I'll see you then.
See ya.